All right, welcome back to the Moment Makers podcast.
Yo.
We've got a shorter episode for you today. Some information, more or less, today versus interview or talking. So we're going to talk about types of anxiety, different markers to identify it, and maybe some tools to use to help cope with it and kind of move past it. So, before we get into it, I want to mention, leave us a review if you can. Give us a comment on the review section. It'll help boost the podcast so more people can see it. It gets recommended to more people. And share it if you can. If you know someone that has an interest in the mental health field, or that has expressed to you that they have some kind of mental illness themselves, share this with them. And we'll do what we can to or share this with them, and maybe it can help them on their journey. So help us grow the podcast. We want to build it into a community where people can come together and support each other. So
yeah, for sure. I'll definitely be posting updates, and if you guys have any questions or anything like that, you guys can reach me on Instagram at Journey of Eli. And then also you can follow Brennan. We're going to be very much trying to connect with everybody in the community. So we really want to make this as interactive as possible, because we want to make it as genuine and real as possible. With that being said, we're also going to be setting up our next interview with another friend of ours. She was actually pretty excited. So we're going to be getting perspective on dealing with mental health issues and the standpoint of being a mother and also being in a relationship. So that's going to be very interesting.
Yeah.
So guys, stay tuned for that one. I'm definitely interested. I mean, of course, Brendan, you and I being guys really have no idea what it's like to be a mother, but I know being a mom, it's definitely a lot of different things that go into it, between going through the pregnancy, hormonal stuff, and just having, in general, the woman's perspective on a lot of different things. So it's going to be but definitely an eye-opener for me, at least.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm not a woman, but I live with a woman who is the mother of 2 kids. So I've shared firsthand the experience, but it's going to be different kind of hearing it from someone who can tell us what their experience has been and how they've kind of coped with it, and all of the ins and outs of it. So it'll be a cool episode for sure. So stay tuned for that one. Let's get into the topic today. Kind of identifying different types of anxiety, what those are, and maybe some ways to cope with those. So
I wanted to bring this topic up because, like, the first step in anything when it comes to healing or any type of work, understanding what you're dealing with, essentially. So, like, any type of project or any type of anything, you're always going to look at the overview and see what's going on. So you're pretty much diagnosing at this point. So, of course, I'm not a doctor or a psychologist. So this is just based off of my experience working in the mental health field, as well as the things that I've learned getting my degree in psychology. So just to kind of put it more in layman's terms, the different types of anxieties that I've experienced as well as studied, um, is that there's different types, but it's all rooted basically in fear or some form of PTSD. So at the bare root of everything, anxiety stems from survival, which we've discussed in previous episodes, where as children we experience a separation anxiety, but it's in a form of a survival technique, because we have to rely on our parents in order to survive, to get all of our needs met. And since we can't really communicate that well, we have to basically react when we're separated from them by crying and screaming and all this. Basically, what babies do to begin with. But as we develop through our childhood, life experiences will actually transform that form of anxiety, or it'll actually intensify it. So, if anybody's experienced some type of abandonment, neglect, or any form in that manner, they usually end up forming an avoidant type of anxiety or an avoidant type of attachment. So, what ends up happening are those are the people that become emotionally detached. They get very fearful of getting close to people. So these are the people that you would say build up walls. And these are the people that you'll see isolate themselves. It's very hard for them to make a lot of friends, and they often are very insecure because they don't know what went wrong for them to be abandoned or neglected. Like something, they usually end up trying to reason, and that reasoning ends up being that something's wrong with them personally, which is obviously not very accurate. So when it comes to this type of anxiety, this one can be actually a lot more difficult to face because you um, you basically experience that emotional detachment. So then it's very hard for you to self reflect and gain that self awareness. So a lot of these people, like these people may be lucky enough to have a couple of people to care about them enough to actually want to talk to them about these serious issues, and most of them will actually not. It's not because they're trying to avoid it intentionally, but it's just because of this anxiety that they're feeling. It's just a natural reaction that they try to avoid the situation, and also just a genuine disconnect from that self awareness. And like I said, most of them usually develop it through some form of rejection or abandonment. Um, and through that, as they get older, it's almost like they grow this anticipation that someone's going to leave. So then they end up kind of beating them to the punch. So at that point is when uh, they think that they're doing something good for themselves by protecting themselves, but in all actuality, we all grow and heal through connecting with people and through self awareness. So from what I've seen work in the psychology office where I used to work at Pilsen Wellness Center, um, it's basically you have to look at that as an objective. So if you're dealing with this, the first thing is that you have to acknowledge it and accept it. It's very hard, but once you accept it, that's your first step, and you can start doing things more objectively. So like, if you're not doing something because you feel like it, you're doing it because you need to make it a practice. You know, you, most of these people have developed this habit as a survival technique, so it's just become second nature. So you're having to reprogram your mentality, and that can take a while. So there are gonna be days it's gonna be easier. There's gonna be days it's gonna be harder. But when you're going through this, you have to make a conscious effort to self-reflect, so you can start building that self-awareness, and that's gonna require diving back into good memories and bad memories. And I always encourage people, like, when they're having to do this, to write it down so that they can look back on it. Because what's going to happen is when you're going through those memories, the good and the bad, you're going to be feeling these emotions. And especially for people that are very avoidant, that's very crucial because, like I said before, they've become very emotionally detached. So to start feeling emotions again is where they start to understand themselves and understand things that affect them. And good or bad, it helps them to develop the emotional connection again, which then actually ends up feeding into their connections with other people. Because part of the reason why it's so hard for them to connect with other people is because they don't have that emotional awareness, so they can't empathize with anybody. They can't understand people as easily as others would, um, because of that disconnection there. When you got to think of it as like when you're talking with a friend or something and they're going through a really hard time, and you're sitting there, you're there, you're supporting them, you're putting yourself in their shoes, and if they need advice, you're giving it to them. All these things that will actually build a connection. um, you'll notice, if you've ever experienced um, a friendship with this avoidant type of anxiety person, they actually kind of just sit there like, well, I don't know why you're freaking out for, or they're sitting there like it could be worse, and like their intentions are good, but because they don't have that connection, they don't really know how to act on it. And a lot of the times they end up belittling the situation without even realizing it. Um, either that, or even if like you were to personally get into a little bit of a conflict between that person, you notice that they shut themselves off like completely. They'll disappear or they'll ghost you, and so being able to take the time to self reflect and connect with your own emotions, that eventually grows into a habit over time, and then you can expend that to your friends, to your family, and people will be able to understand you better, as well as you'll be able to understand them better, because you'll be able to put yourself mentally and emotionally in their shoes. So like different ways to help encourage that type of growth, like I said, is going back through your memories, the good ones, the bad ones, writing down what they are, how they made you feel, and then just like every day make a conscious effort to connect with somebody just by talking to them. It doesn't have to be nothing deep or meaningful or emotional, but just talk. And when they're telling you about something, if you may not have experienced the same thing that they're talking about, you can still try and relate. Refer back to a moment in life. Like, let's say this person's talking to you about being irritated at work and like they didn't feel valued or whatever. You may not be experiencing that personally at your job, but you can reflect back on a memory where you felt like you weren't valued, and then you'll be able to understand how they're feeling. And that's a way that you can build an understanding and build a connection and be emotionally available. So this is something that's like a conscious effort that you're gonna have to do. Now, for those that are on the opposite spectrum, so instead of being avoidant, they're more of like they've uh, intensified their separation anxiety, and they actually are, you would say, like hypersensitive to emotions, and that's where I'm at personally. I'm more of the hypersensitive, so I end up being the type of guy that will put myself in people's shoes and totally understand how people's feelings are. And most of the time, I'll end up like if someone's crying, I'll even get to the point where I'll end up crying with them. And
Hmm.
so switching over to more of the separation anxiety, intensified anxiety. This stems from uh, either they were overly um, attentive, so that when they were kids, their parents really were super attentive, and they um, didn't allow the child to self-soothe at all, so then become very reliant on people. And then someone important must have left. So of course, this is all like relative. Any person can be important, but for that person, uh, one person may or may not have left or emotionally checked out. So they felt that disconnect in there. Um, so the thing is, so the main difference between like an avoidant type of person and then separation anxiety type of person or anxious person is that the avoidant person from the start really didn't feel too much of a connection, um, and the other person that has more separation anxiety has felt that connection and either lost it or felt like they were distanced from it, and that's when that separation anxiety really flares up. So these are the kids that really fight for acceptance and really think about what other people think about them, and you see them that they make a lot of good friends. They make a lot of friends because they had that ability to interact with their parents, um, so they can actually relate to some emotions. But the only thing is that they become very dependent on that interaction. So
Hmm.
these are the people that are like, oh, I can't stay at home. I can't stay at home alone. Like I get trapped in my own head. Or they're the type that if you don't invite them out, like they take it very personal. Um, and that's because they've gone to a place where they become very dependent on other people to soothe. So I actually had posted something on Facebook where it says that sometimes the best thing you can do is just support somebody as they're growing and healing on their own. Um, And I'm a firm advocate for self care because people at the end of the day, we're human and we're not perfect and we will mess up. Um, so like you'll have somebody that's supporting you, and something in their lives might happen, and they may have to step away. Well, guess what? There goes your support, there goes your motivation, there goes your reason to grow and all that. So you have to be able to find your reasoning and your motivation from within to be able to self-soothe and to grow and have your own form of self-care. Because at that point, then there's no excuse. It's all on you. And
And
honestly,
I
it's
think
you
I
away.
think that's why me and you are drawn to lifting the way that we are, because
Yeah.
that's our form of self care, but it's self care in a way that I'm the kind of person that would prefer to work out by myself than with
Yeah.
someone. I don't know if you're the same way, but and I think a lot of that has to do with me kind of forcing myself, because I have the same kind of. I used to have it really bad when I was younger, where I would care more about what people thought about me, and have that separation anxiety. And
Mhm.
I've had a lot of bad relationships in my life too that have added to a lot of that anxiety. Um, but when I started lifting and getting into fitness and eating better and doing those things, it kind of forced me to live in my own head. Um,
Mhm.
Not necessarily deal with anything, but just clear my mind. And I think that might be why we're at least drawn to lifting and fitness, because it gives us a chance to clear our mind and to stop thinking about every small little thing. And that being used as a tool to overcome that type of anxiety, at least for me personally, obviously lifting, you're going to gain confidence because you're going to change the way your body is. You're going to transform the way that you look, the way that you feel. So there's a level of confidence that comes with that. Um, there's also a level of confidence that comes with doing something yourself. Not relying on
Mhm.
someone else for that attention or for that gratification. You're doing it yourself, so there's a level of pride and confidence that comes with that. And I think having that as what at least me and you use as a tool has helped us move past a lot of those anxieties because of the confidence that we've gained from it.
Yeah, exactly. And like it's even like the cliche saying, the victory starts at home when you choose to go to the gym even though you don't
Yeah.
want to. I see it as like a circle. So like the first mental battle is saying I want to go to the gym, and then actually taking the steps to go to the gym. So
Mm-hmm.
like right there, you're already beating the first part of the battle, and you're investing in yourself. So you start. It's like a step by step process where it's continuously like, oh well, I'm proud that I got my gym membership. Oh well, I'm proud that I actually made it on the first day, and then you keep on going, and it's like I'm proud that I actually did go, and I'm now I'm a month in, 2 months in, and in that manner, it's very much like it's self rewarding, like both mentally and physically. At least for me, in my experience, that was like a huge point for me because when I first started lifting, um, I I used to always be really self conscious about the way that I looked because I was always like super skinny and like super weak. So
Mm-hmm.
so that's like that in itself is all about perspective because some people be like, oh my gosh, like you're skinny, like you should be happy and blah blah blah. But being a guy, I want to be strong,
Yeah.
and for me, instead of sitting there and not doing anything about it, it felt good to be like, all right, now I'm doing something productive about it. And you know, for me personally, when I'm in the gym, like you say, like I clear my head, and it all of a sudden, instead of it being like an emotional battle, it becomes an objective battle. So it's like, all right, so instead of being emotional, like, oh, I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that, I'm feeling all this emotion and overthinking everything, it's literally objective at that point. I walk in the
Yeah.
door and I'm like, all right, warm up. All right, let's get this first set done. Now to bump it up. All right, what did I do last week? All right, let's load on some more. Hit that. And then it's just at that point I'm so focused on an objective goal that it just focuses me and it erases all overthinking that I've been experiencing, and like it's a relief. And it also built up this mental skill for me where since I've thought about it so objectively in the gym, I think about it objectively outside of the gym as well now.
Yeah. Yep.
So so that pertains to my schedule now. So like I'll wake up, I'll make sure I eat my breakfast, start the day off right. I'll make sure I take my good 15 to 30 minutes of self reflecting. Make sure I write down my stuff. Even if I can't, like, if I run out of time, objectively, I make a point to get it done later on the day. I do not go a day without doing my journaling and without my reflecting because you have to make it a habit.
So
So, no,
and I don't, I'm not meaning to interrupt you. I want to make a point too. Um, so kind of what you're going into is more of those like self-care things.
yeah,
For me and you, fitness is a big part of our lives, but that's not the only thing that you can use for self-care. There's a guy, his name's Jocko Willink. He's a Navy SEAL, and he's got a ton of videos on YouTube. He did an interview with Casey Neistat on his channel. He did an episode. He's probably done a couple of episodes on the Joe Rogan podcast. But he had one recently, like a week or two ago. But he's a big advocate of winning small battles. Like getting up in the morning earlier than you normally would. That's a small battle. You win that battle. You make your bed. That's another battle. You win that battle. You go to the gym. You win that battle. So it's setting attainable goals first thing in the morning that you can win that battle, and it boosts that productivity in yourself to get the next thing done. It's setting small goals that you can achieve. Going out and losing 20 pounds in a week is not realistic, but going to the gym 3 times in a week is.
Yeah.
Or going to the gym 1 time in a week is. It's setting small goals that you can have that feeling of accomplishment when you reach that goal.
Yeah.
And we can go more into the different things that we do personally, aside from just lifting that are kind of personal goals that we set, or those routine that we have that helps us stay within that mind space of staying above the anxiety. And we can talk about that in another episode. I think that's a good like day in the life kind of thing. But using those things as tools to overcome and move past your anxiety is part of it. I mean, that's the whole battle is setting small goals that you can move past, obtain, and ultimately feel like you've accomplished it just, right from the beginning of getting up in the morning.
Yeah, exactly. And and that's the whole point of it. It's taking small steps, whether you're in the very beginning steps of finding self-awareness or you're in the beginning steps of your self-care process. It's all about small steps. So like I was saying before, understanding where you're at right now, like embracing it, understanding that there is hope, and being able to take the time to self-reflect, even if you know and I want to make this clear, like when you're first starting off with this self-reflection and meditation noise, it's not easy.
No.
It can be very difficult because sometimes you may be sitting there confused or not knowing what to do or anything like that, and that's why I always encourage get professional help. Like I do this for myself because I'm able to do it because the fact that I went and sought out professional help, and then I also studied in the field as well. So I was able to learn the tools necessary to help guide my reflections. And if you don't have the means to be able to do that, then there are definitely videos on YouTube. I like Coach Craig Kenneth. He's a great psychotherapist. He mainly focuses on relationships, but he does dive into different types of anxieties and attachments, and definitely I believe he's onto something, and he's been working um, well over a decade. And his superior, Margaret, she's been into psychology for over 35 years, so she's been doing uh, intense studies. Um, so there's definitely different ways to start the healing process.
And it's
All about
important to note too that there's no reason to be embarrassed about it. There's no reason to go into it with the mindset of, oh, I'm the only one that feels this way. Or, for example, like going to the gym for the first time, there's no reason to go into it intimidated by everybody else around you, because everyone else around you started somewhere. You didn't wake up jacked as hell and ready to rock and roll, pulling 600 pounds on deadlift. Everyone starts somewhere that's zero. That's their zero that they build from. So that's an important thing to note, is that you're not alone, that there's other people that are just starting the same way that you are. And everyone, no matter who they are, has started from somewhere. Whether or not they're on level 75 doesn't matter. They started somewhere, and that's where you're at now.
Yeah, I mean, even from my personal experience, like I was a buck 40. I couldn't do a single pull up, and I was benching what, maybe 95 pounds.
Yeah.
And when I went in there, honestly, what motivated me the most, it wasn't the jack dudes lifting like 300 pounds or 600 pounds. It was the people that were out of shape, that were on the treadmill, that I saw every day, and them being consistent. And a lot of those people I've actually seen transform completely. And the beautiful part about me working at the gym for a while was I got to see their transformation, and it is so motivating and it's empowering, because it's those people that focused hard. They invested in themselves and they stay motivated, that they actually saw the big transformation externally. But then when you talk to them, you hear about their internal transformation. They said that they were able to build more confidence. They've And not just confidence about their looks, but confidence about that they can do anything. 9 times out of 10, when I've talked to somebody who's like dropped 100 pounds or something, they've went back to school, or they've went and chased another career, or they've gotten promotions or anything like that. And that's what triggers such a mental and emotional growth, because they were able to focus on something and invest in themselves and stay committed. So then it builds up their confidence that they could do that. Now they can do something else.
Yeah.
It was
It's
just
a
like,
ripple effect. It's crazy.
yeah, I mean, even for me, I mean, I went in there not really thinking that I could do anything, and I went in there a freaking buck 40, and then like now I'm averaging like 170, 175. I'm
Yeah.
hitting weight that I never thought I could, and I'm chasing my dreams as a tattoo artist. I've got my degree, and it's just a constant. It's like a constant snowball effect. It started off with just working out, and then all of a sudden I got my degree, and all of a sudden now I'm chasing a career that I never thought in a million years I'd even
Yeah.
have the opportunity to. And it's all about just your mentality. It's all about investing in yourself and creating that mentality that you put your mind to it, then you can do anything.
And that's with anything. I mean, we bring up lifting as an example because that's something that me and you have in common, but that's not going to be for everyone, and that's fine.
Yeah.
You might not care about your outward appearance, but there's things that you personally have goals for. Like, we've mentioned music a few times. We're both into music.
Yeah.
Not as much as we used to be, but still pretty prevalent in our lives. Music's a big one. You could build your skills on the guitar or on the piano or on the drums, whatever it is, as your escape, as your therapy, as your way to clear your mind. It doesn't have to be lifting or doing those types of things. It doesn't have to be even what makes sense to most people. If it's self-care to you, it's self-care to you, and that's all that matters. And
Yeah.
if you can build and grow from that one thing, and let it leach over into other aspects of your life that help grow and build in those aspects, that's all that matters.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what, yeah, and then to basically build off of that, it's just, like I said, it's just small steps, discovering your passions and going for it, like, I've met people that they're like, oh, I always wanted to travel and all this stuff, but then they're like, oh, but I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't do that, and I'm like, no, and I would actually like, I would kind of lecture them a little bit, because sometimes you just got to be blunt with them,
Yeah.
and being real with people is a lot more impactful than being all sensitive sometimes, and you know trying to sugarcoat everything. Sometimes they gotta know
Mm-hmm.
right away. I mean, don't be a jerk about it, but be real. And I told them, like, hey, if you can go out to eat every weekend and spend a good $20-$30, that's already like $120 a month. That's already a train ticket to somewhere. You know,
Yeah.
so it's just all about prioritizing. What you want to do. People want
Mm-hmm.
have all these dreams, but then they get distracted. And that's why I always encourage people to take a step back, look at what's going on in your life, and change the things that you feel like you need to change so that you can be happier. I always tell people, um, do what makes you happy, even if it doesn't make the most amount of money, or it doesn't make sense to other people. It doesn't. At the end of the day, it's your life. At the end of the day, we're all gonna live our lives, and what's the point of living a life that is pleasing to others when you have to go through it yourself?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's what a lot of people's anxiety stem from is pleasing others, is lack of financial freedom, is just money in general. And I
Hmm.
think once you can break the stigma of pleasing other people and having to have this and this because it'll make me look better to these people, you can start to weed out what, kind of do like an inventory of your life, and weed out what you don't need in your life, the people you don't need in your life that are just succubuses, and they're taking all of your joy. Once
Yeah,
you start cutting things out that aren't conducive to your happiness, you'll see change, you'll see growth, you'll see your life transform into what you want it to be, or what you didn't even know you wanted it to be, what you needed all along.
yeah, exactly. An example would be like how my dreams have changed over time. Like, initially, I wanted to like live out in the country, have a big farm, and have this big house and all this stuff. And then as time went on, I realized that's not going to work for me, because I'm going to want to travel, and it just doesn't make sense to me. And like, for most people, that's their dream. They want the house, they want the family, they want all this stuff. Um, but then constantly people are talking about like they want to travel, they want to do all this stuff. So it's like you got to adjust to what you want, not to what society expects.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, everybody judges their success like, oh, did you get a degree, did you find a career, oh, did you buy a house, did you buy a car, all this stuff. And at the end of the day, none of that is really necessary. As long
Yeah.
as you're in the career field that you like, whether
Hmm.
you have a big house, a small house, whatever makes you happy and comfortable, that's what matters. And like, I've noticed that, like, when I've sat down and talked with older people, which I encourage, if any of you guys ever have the opportunity to talk with somebody that's older, well into their 60s or older, man, they have stories to tell, and their
Yeah.
wisdom beyond words can even comprehend. And a lot of them always have expressed like that it wasn't it wasn't the things that they bought that mattered. It was the times that they spent with their family. It was the memories that were made, and that's what
Yeah.
uh, that's what pretty much that mattered at the end of the day. Like, nothing else had other value compared to those memories.
Yeah.
And so, like, for example, for me, I don't really care for a big house anymore. I'm more than happy with just having like a small cabin, and I don't need no fancy car. I'm cool with even just having a little beater car. As long as it just gets me to point A to point B, and I can save my money for other things. Like, like to continue to get tattooed, or to travel and see the world. Um, just whatever you want in life, and you want to take out. take out of this life, you just gotta do it. Like I always tell people, you just gotta step back and see where your priorities are and your spendings. A lot of people want to indulge in all these materialistic things, or they all food honestly is a huge one, and especially here in
Yeah.
Chicago, we got a bunch of restaurants, and they're going out to eat all the time, and I'm like, that's awesome, like cool, like you're exploring, whatever makes you happy. But if you want to travel, imagine trying pizza in Italy, you know those, like, and it's just having the discipline to focus yourself on different goals, which goes back to
Yeah.
self-care. um
Yeah.
and if you just gotta think about what do you want the most, and releasing yourself from the expectations of society and finding out what truly makes you happy. If what makes you happy is living out of your car and traveling on the road your whole life, then do it. You know, and who cares about what other people say? I'm jealous of people that are like that, because I would love to do that, but I don't think I personally could have the mental strength to do that, because I'm very much like family oriented and my friends oriented. So that's just me personally. But I know there's other people that are very much happy with just keeping in contact with the family, but still going out on their own, striking out and exploring.
Yeah.
And there's a beauty in that. And I think that a lot of people, and I'm sure you've experienced this, where people have like freaked out, like, oh my gosh, you're living out of your car, and they look down upon that. But, if that makes them happy, then, who are we to judge?
Yeah.
So it's like, so in order to get to that place and that mentality, it all starts with self-care. It all starts with understanding where your anxiety stems from, what type of anxiety you have, whether it is avoidant or whether it is anxious. Those are like the two main anxieties that are around. Different forms of PTSD, um, which essentially are forms of anxiety that are triggered due to a similar situation they've experienced before. And it doesn't.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a veteran to experience PTSD. You don't have to be somebody that went through something severely traumatic. Um, for example, for me, I experienced PTSD just from people leaving, um, and I haven't really experienced anything too traumatic in my life. I mean, just from my divorce and my parents divorcing. That's pretty much it. I mean, well, besides a couple life-threatening accidents, but but even then, yeah, experiencing PTSD. But it all starts with self-care. You know.
It
Uh,
starts with recognizing and realizing where your mental state is and taking the steps necessary to take care of yourself, to implement some self-care routines, and to find growth. So I think that's a good place to end it too.
yeah.
Um, if you guys think of anything else that we didn't touch on, something that you were hoping that we talk about but we didn't, let us know. Either hit us up on Instagram, find us on Facebook, leave a comment down in the description of or the in the reviews of the podcast. Not only is it a good way for you to get in touch with us right from listening to it, but you can also send us suggestions, comments, questions, whatever you want right there in the podcast review section. So leave us a review if you can. Just take 5 minutes to do that, or not even. It takes about 20 seconds to do that and help us reach more people with it. So anything you want to say before we close it?
Yeah, and then just continue to support us, guys. We're trying to reach out to as many people as possible and create this community. So if you can share it on Facebook, share it on Instagram, and definitely want to hear what you guys have to say. I would like to hear, what if you guys have some self care routines. I'd love to hear about them, and be able to share it on our podcast with other people, because there may be things you guys are doing that I haven't thought of or heard of before. So definitely want to hear all the different types of self care that you guys are doing, so we can expand, per se, the menu of self care.
Yeah, for sure. Well, cool. That's going to close us out. Thanks for joining us. Be on the lookout for the next episode. It's going to be a good one.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, she got a great story.
All right. We'll catch you guys in the next one.
Take care.